guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Oh, peace, peace, peace. Good evening and a happy Swami Vivekananda birthday today. We will be celebrating, of course, with the main puja on Sunday so that everyone can attend. But the lunar calendar puts it on today. It's interesting. In India, they celebrate Vivekananda Day according to the Western calendar, and here we celebrate his Puja Day on the lunar calendar. Go figure. Anyway, just to review, we're going to be celebrating the 125th anniversary of his coming to Southern California, which he did in December of 1899. And I'll just recount a little bit of what happened. He was on the train on the 1st and 2nd of December, and then he arrived in Los Angeles and spent time at Miss Spencer's home. Then he moved to Roxy Blodgett. Roxy Blodgett was the one who had been taking care of Tom Teen's dying brother, and that was the connection that brought him to Southern California. He stayed with Mrs. Blodgett all the way through December and into January. Then he stayed with the Stimsons for about 5 days, 6 days, and then Emmeline Bowler. And then he spent one night at the hotel on Mount Low, which has since burnt down. And then he moved to Mrs. J. Newton's. They think, it's not certain, that's a little bit uncertain as to exactly the location, but we think he was there for about 4 days, and then we think he may have gone back to Mrs. Blodgett's for 6 days before he moved in with the Mead sisters in South Pasadena on the 23rd of January, 1900, and stayed there for about 4 weeks. So after we finish going through the tales and parables of Sri Ramakrishna in honor of his second visit to the United States and the first visit to Southern California, we will be taking some of the lectures that he delivered in Southern California. But before we do that, we will be continuing with the tales and parables of Sri Ramakrishna. But at the end of today's, I'm going to play one selection from the Vivekananda Oratorio in celebration of his birthday today. All right, so we're going to be reading an interesting incident. That's what it's called, an interesting incident. So, all right, so that's in the Tales and Parables. In my edition, it's on page 191.
You have to remember, this is Ramakrishna speaking. Padmalochana was a man of deep wisdom, and he had great respect for me, though at that time I constantly repeated the name of the Divine Mother. He was the court pundit of the Maharaja Burdwan. Once he came to Calcutta, and he went to live in a garden house near Kamahati. I felt a desire to see him. Sent Ridoy there to learn if the pundit had any vanity. I was told that he had none. Then I met him. Though a man of great knowledge and scholarship, he began to weep on hearing me sing Ramprasad's devotional songs. We talked together a long while. Conversation with nobody else gave me such satisfaction. Padmalochan told me an interesting incident. Once a meeting was called to decide which of the two deities, Shiva or Brahma, was the greater. And unable to come to any decision, the pundits at last referred the matter to Padmalochan. With characteristic godlessness, he said, "How do I know? Neither I nor any of my ancestors back to the 14th generation have seen Shiva or Brahma."
It reminds me of something John Dobson used to reply. Somebody would ask him about pralaya, and he says, and he was quite elderly at the time, probably in his 80s, and he says, I am not so old to have remembered pralaya. Yes, so who knows? We haven't, we're not so old to remember having seen Shiva or Brahma to know who was greater. And of course, they're all really just aspects of the one. So you can argue if you prefer a particular actor as portraying a particular character or not, and you might think they did a better job portraying so-and-so in a particular movie or another particular person in another movie. Well, you could argue like that, but it's the same person. So similarly, all these different aspects and gods and goddesses are really aspects of the one. And it is interesting dilemma too. We certainly want to encourage people to study the scriptures and so forth, but we don't want people to think that just being a scholar is the be-all and end-all. We're not here to produce scholars in that sense. We're here to encourage people in spiritual life, and that's what studying the scriptures is supposed to do for you. And fortunately, Padmalochan had not become egotistical about his scholarship. All right, let's look at why not through a man.
It is God himself who plays about as human beings. If God can be worshipped through a clay image, then why not through a man? Once a merchant was shipwrecked. He floated to the shore of Ceylon, where Vibhishana was the king of the monsters. Vibhishana ordered his servants to bring the merchant to him. At the sight of him, Vibhishana was overwhelmed with joy and said, "Ah, he looks like my Rama, the same human form." And he adorned the merchant with robes and jewels and worshipped him. Oh, when I first heard this story, I felt such joy that I cannot describe it.
Interesting story. I've never heard that one. Of course, there's a tradition to worship a young girl as the Divine Mother, and Sri Ramakrishna worshipped Holy Mother in that way as well. So it's a tradition to try to see God in human form, and on occasion to actually use a living being as a symbol of the divine. All right, let's read about when God laughs.
God laughs on two occasions. He laughs when the physician says to the patient's mother, "Oh, don't be afraid, mother. I shall certainly cure your boy." God laughs to himself. "I'm going to take his life. This man says he will save it." The physician thinks he is the master, forgetting that God is the master. God laughs again when two brothers divide their land with a string, saying to each other, "Now this side is mine, and that side is yours." He laughs and says to himself, "The universe belongs to me." But they say they own this portion or that portion.
Yes, well, I guess it's good to give God a good laugh every once in a while, right? And indeed, when you see people that get sick, sometimes they inscrutably get better, and sometimes you think they're going to get better, and they suddenly submise. It's always very curious. It's not at all explainable on occasions, and we just have to remember that it's God's will. We do the best we can, but it's actually it's the will of the Lord that is the ultimate authority here. And sometimes a medicine seems to work, and sometimes it doesn't seem to work. And so all of these things that we do for our health seem to have something to do with making us better on the physical plane, but ultimately all of this is the divine play. And of course, borders are very peculiar and very impermanent. A lot of times they're determined by a river, and the river changes course every once in a while. Or, for example, in San Francisco during the earthquake, the great earthquake, property lines, property moved, the fault moved several feet. On the Olima property, you can see where the fence was shifted several feet, where it broke and split. And so then where is the property line? If the ground has shifted and cliffs tumble into the ocean, and so people who had property, now it's slipped into the ocean. So all of these property lines are very temporary. And as the parable says, they really didn't belong to any particular person in the first place. It's just that one person has a caretakership over a particular portion, and that's the way we should look at it. We have caretakership over particular portions, and we're looking after it on behalf of the real owner. All right, how do you explain that? Well, that's the next question in the parable.
One must believe in the divine presence in the image. Once I went to Vishnupur. The Raja of that place has several fine temples. In one of them, there is an image of the Divine Mother called Mrinmaya. There are several lakes near the temple, known as the Lal Band, Krishna Band, and so on. In the water of one of the lakes, I could smell the ointments that women use for their hair. Now, how do you explain that? I didn't know at the time that the women devotees offer ointments to the goddess Mrinmaya while visiting her temple. And near the lake, I went into samadhi, though I had not yet seen the image in the temple. But in that state, I saw the divine form from the waist up, rising from the water.
There's an incident where Swami Ramakrishna visited a Vishnu temple, and he had a vision of the Divine Mother, and he says, this seems to be a temple for the Divine Mother. It doesn't seem to be a Vishnu temple. Of course, most people don't have that experience. They just take it for granted, whatever it seems to be a temple of. But Swami Brahmananda had an acute divine sight. And sure enough, it had been a temple to the Divine Mother, and it had been later converted to a temple for Vishnu by Ramanuja. And so of course, again, all of these aspects are really one, but some people prefer certain images over the other, certain representations. And so each temple tends to get a particular energy because of the consciousness of the devotees worshiping there. And so just as different places get different energies, different temples get the energy of the different representations of the divine that are there. That's why we go to temples, and that's why great souls often do have spiritual experiences going to these places, because they pick up on that energy vibration of the temple. And that's why we prefer to go to a temple to meditate than, say, a library or a bar. The energies of those places are very different. And so you want to go to a place where the vibrations are conducive to your meditation process. So you go to some place where people have been meditating for a long time. All right, let's read the next one. Who can tell?
Now take the case of a patient Nature has almost cured him when the physician prescribes an herb and asks him to drink its juice. After taking the medicine, he's completely cured. Now, is the patient cured by the medicine? Or does he get well by himself? Who can tell? Lakshmana said to Lava and Kutha, "You are mere children. You don't know Rama's power." The touch of his feet, Altalya, who had been turned into a stone, got back her human form. Lava and Kutha said, "Oh, revered sir, we know that. We've heard the story. The stone became a Haya because of the power of the holy man's words." The sage Gautama said to her, "The Trita Yuga, Rama will pass this hermitage. You will become a human being again at the touch of his feet." Now, who can tell whether the miracle happened in order that the sage's words should be fulfilled, or on account of Rama's holiness?
And of course, the sage's words were based on the fact that Rama was holy. So it's really the same question. And of course, here again, we're talking about this mysterious nature of healing and cures. And of course, it's been demonstrated that there's a great benefit to believing in the medication. The more you believe that it's going to work, the more it's going to work. It might work even if you didn't believe in it, but it's probably much more likely to work if you do believe in it. Your mental thoughts are extremely powerful to help the cure along. And you can interfere with that cure if you don't have that belief. There was one famous incident where a man was dying of cancer, and the physician decided to try a new drug that had just been approved, and the patient got well. And then it was discovered that the medication actually didn't work, and the patient read that in the newspaper and immediately became sick again. And so the doctor, realizing what had happened, that it was his belief that had caused this to happen, fibbed. This is called therapeutic fibbing. The doctor fibbed and told the patient that they had just come out with a revised edition of the medication that did work. And so again, the patient got better, but then the patient eventually found out what had happened and became sick and died again. So this would lend one to want to become a Christian Scientist, and where your whole healing is dependent on your faith. Well, it's probably better to combine the two. If you combine faith with a proper medication, that's probably the best combination. All right, man in divine state. This is a whole new section of parables.
The wine of heavenly bliss. The son said to the father, "Well, Father, you taste a little wine, and after that, if you ask me to give up drinking, I shall do so." After drinking the wine, the father said, "Son, you may give it up. I have no objection, but I'm certainly not going to give it up myself."
So he had tasted, this is, I guess, an analogy of tasting the divine state, or tasting heavenly bliss. Once you've tasted it, you don't want to give it up. That's why we want to stick to our meditation practice, and that's why people that have had any kind of glimpse of a spiritual experience will be the ones most apt to stick to their spiritual practice, because they don't want to give up that divine experience, and they want to get it back if they had it briefly, and they want to get it back. All right, they wander in many disguises.
Once a god-intoxicated sadhu came to the Kali temple. One day he received no food. But though feeling hungry, he did not ask for any. Seeing a dog eating the remnants of a feast thrown away in a corner, he went there and embraced the dog and said, "Oh, brother, how is it that you eat alone without giving me a share?" And so saying, he began to eat along with the dog. Having finished his meal in this strange company, the sadhu entered the temple of Mother Kali. He prayed with such an ecstasy of devotion as to send a thrill throughout the temple. When after finishing his prayer, he was going to leave, I asked Hridoy to follow the man, to let me know what he might say. So Hridoy followed him for some distance. When the sadhu, turning around, inquired, "Why do you follow me?" But Hridoy said, "Revered sir, give me some teaching." The sadhu replied, "When the water of this ditch, yonder Ganges, appears as one and the same in your sight, when the sound of this flageolet, the noise of that crowd, have no distinction to your ear, then you will reach the state of true knowledge." And so saying, he hastened away. Well, when I heard this from Hridoy, I remarked, that man has reached the true state of ecstasy, the true state of knowledge. The Siddhas roam about sometimes like guileless children, sometimes like ghouls, and other times like madmen. Indeed, they wander in many disguises.
And of course, Sri Ramakrishna saw consciousness everywhere and fed the offering that was meant for the Kali image to the cat and so forth. So these experiences of these great divine souls really literally do see everything the same. They see everything as one. They don't see the distinctions. And it's because everything is Brahman. Brahman alone is real, and everything is Brahman. All is Brahman is one of the great Mahavakyas. And that's the basis of our philosophy. That, of course, Shankara takes a viewpoint of the superimposition of this world of Maya on the reality, but that doesn't mean that the reality still doesn't come from Brahman. It's still a manifestation of Brahman. It's just our interpretation that doesn't see it correctly. Vishnu everywhere. So this is a whole section on human beings being in a particular divine state where everything appears as one, which is what it really is. All right, Vishnu everywhere.
There was a holy man who used to live in a state of ecstasy. He would not speak with anyone. He was regarded as a lunatic. But one day, having begged some food in the village, he took his seat by the side of a dog and started eating. A strange sight now presented itself, attracted a crowd of spectators. For the holy man would put one morsel into his own mouth and the next into that of the dog, so that the man and the beast, they went on eating together like a pair of friends. Some of the spectators began to laugh at the holy man as being a mad fellow. But he said, "Why do you laugh? Vishnu is seated with Vishnu. Vishnu is feeding Vishnu. Why do you laugh, O Vishnu? Whatever is Vishnu."
Which reminds us of our meal chant from the Bhagavad Gita. Brahman is the ritual, Brahman is the offering, Brahman is he who offers to the fire that is Brahman. If one sees Brahman in every action, one will find Brahman. So in this case, we're seeing Brahman in the form of Vishnu, And Vishnu is doing everything. Vishnu is sitting next to Vishnu in the form of the dog, and the Vishnu in form of the man and the Vishnu in the form of the dog are both eating, which is they're feeding on a form of Vishnu, and the people that are laughing are forms of Vishnu. So everything is really Vishnu. All right, continuing on this same theme, where is the misery for him who sees the one?
Once there came to Dakshineshwar two sadhus. They were father and son. The son had attained true knowledge. The father had not. Now both were sitting in the room where Sri Ramakrishna lived and were talking with him. But in the meantime, a young cobra came out of a rat hole and bit the son. Seeing that the father was terribly frightened and began to call all the people around, but the son sat quiet. That puzzled the father still more. When he asked the son why he was sitting quiet, the son laughed and said, "Which is the snake, and whom has it bitten?" He had realized the unity, and hence he could not make any distinction between a man and a snake.
So that just continues the same theme, that the one who has realized the highest sees everything as one, because that is its true nature. Everything is one. It's all from Brahman. It's the subject and the object have arisen from the one. You can't get the subject from the object, and you can't get the object from the subject. They arise together as one, and we experience the world because we identify ourselves as a subject and everything else as an object. But we know from both Vedanta and from quantum physics that the plurality of the observer is a fiction. The observer is only one. All right, both friend and foe, the saints adore.
There was a monastery in a certain place. The monks residing there went out daily to beg their food. One day a monk, while out for his alms, saw a landlord beating a man mercilessly. A compassionate monk stepped in, asked the landlord to stop. The landlord was filled with anger and turned his wrath against the innocent monk. He beat the monk till he fell unconscious on the ground. Someone reported the matter to the monastery. The monks ran to the spot and found their brother lying there. 4 or 5 of them carried him back, laid him on a bed, and he was still unconscious. The other monks sat around him, sad at heart, and some were fanning him. Finally, someone suggested that he should be given a little milk to drink. When it was poured into his mouth, he regained consciousness. He opened his eyes, looked around. When the monk said, "Let us see whether he is fully conscious and can recognize us," shouting into his ear, he said, "Revered sir, who's giving you milk?" "Brother," replied the man, "he who beat me is now giving me milk."
And of course, again, he was realizing that all are one, that the person who beat him was one with his brother monks and one with himself as well. All right, illusory alike.
There was a woodcutter who was highly spiritual. One day he was dreaming a happy dream, but being suddenly awakened by someone, he exclaimed with annoyance, "Oh, why did you awaken me?" I was the king and the father of 7 children, and my children were all receiving education in various sciences. I was seated on the throne and ruling over my country. And why did you destroy so happy and delightful a state? The man replied, oh, it's only a dream. What does it matter? The woodcutter said, oh, get away, you fool. You do not understand that my being a king was as real as my woodcutting. Could it be true that I'm a woodcutter? And it's equally true that I was a king. According to Vedanta, the waking state is no more real than the dream state.
And we often say that this is the cosmic dream. The Shaivites usually put it in terms of Shiva. It's the dream of Shiva. Shiva is the cosmic dreamer. Or sometimes it's thought of as Vishnu dreaming and or Brahma dreaming. Just depends on which particular scripture you're reading. But it's the cosmic dream. And so in the cosmic dream, the Lord himself becomes all of the things in the dream. And you're a perfect analogy to that. When you dream, all the characters and things in your dream are one with you. They're not coming from the outside. There's no place for them to come from except from within you. So similarly, Brahman is the only reality, and there's no place else for all of this to come except from Brahman. All right, childlike, well, let's see. Maybe we better stop here because I want to play this piece and just say a couple words before. You know, none of us would probably be here if Swami Vivekananda hadn't come to the West. And of course, his first visit was in 1893 to the Parliament of Religions, where he opened with, well, to himself, he said a prayer, O Mother, giver of Vak, which is referring to the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of speech and eloquence. Thou self-existent one, come as Vak upon my lips. And from that he gave his famous speeches. So then, of course, he was so well liked from his talks at the Parliament that people hired him to speak all over the country. Many people from all over the country had visited the Parliament, and so they lived in various parts of the country, and so he would get invitations to various parts of the country. He had a lecture bureau who was not very honest with him, unfortunately. They didn't pay him very well, but they got him around the country and got him lectures in many, many cities. And so many of our centers got their start because of people who had met him in association with the Parliament of Religions. The chorus that we're going to hear is the final chorus in the Vivekananda Oratorio, and it starts with a phrase that he used, I think I counted 34 times in the complete works. So how many times he really used it was probably even more than that, since we don't have absolutely every word he ever said in there. But arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached. One of those quotes is in volume 1, page 342, and it continues with the attempt is to kill the false I so that the real I, the Lord, will reign. And in volume 6, it's again quoted, arise, awake, sleep no more. Within each of you there is the power to remove all wants and miseries. Then in volume 2, page 339, he reminds us of the great Mahavakya, thou art that, for we must know our true nature, the absolute. And in volume 7, page 182, he says, tell each and all that infinite power resides within them, that they are sharers of immortal bliss. And volume 1 again, he says, you are infinite, deathless, and birthless. So I put those all together into this chorus,
which goes, arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached, sleep no more. Rise and sleep no more. Know your true nature, the absolute. Infinite power resides within you. Know the truth. Arise, awake. You are infinite, deathless, birthless. Fear not. Kill the false I, and the real I, the Lord, will reign. Arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached. So we'll listen to that now. Ready? Compilation of several live performances. But anyway, I'm sure we're all grateful that Swami Vivekananda made his trips here and gave these wonderful messages to the people. You can imagine how that must have, how his messages must have sounded to people that had not heard anything but various Christian ministers speaking. The message here was so different from the prevailing fire and brimstone type of message that many Christian pastors were delivering in those days. And this message that you were infinite, deathless, birthless, and that you should arise awake. So it was a real call to a new type of spiritual path where it wasn't something you just had to believe, but something that you could experience yourself. And it was a completely novel experience, you could say, or a novel message for the people of the Western Hemisphere. And I imagine we would have a few Hindu temples here if he hadn't come, but I don't think the Ramakrishna mission would have ever grown to its extent in the West if it hadn't been for Swami Vivekananda. All right, let's close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om peace, peace, peace. And a reminder, we will be having the main puja this Sunday. Starts with a breakfast offering at 6:30 in the morning, and then the reading of the Katha Upanishad, some singing and chanting between that and the main puja after that, the homa fire after that, the flower offering after that, prasad after that, and a children's play based on a jungle story, jungle book story. It will be in Bengali with English translator translating the scenes as they go. And then the special arati in the evening. The following Sunday is Swami Brahmananda's puja, and then is Saraswati's puja this month as well. Her puja is on the 14th. So since we talked about her as the giver of Vak, I thought I would mention that it's her puja on the 14th. All right. Good evening.